All right. So at the end of the last time I played a Little Nightmares game, Little Nightmares 1, I also did a little roundup of what I thought the game was about. And that time, I felt like I kind of knew what was going on throughout the game. Like, I picked up on the themes, I could understand them. This game, the second Little Nightmares game, presents much more complex themes, I think. I don't think I can fully lay out an understanding of them here. I feel like I've honestly got to think on it for a little. But just my immediate impressions after playing, this feels like the theme that the game is getting at from the first part is this like image metaphor of simulacrum to build into the idea of distortion. So what I mean by that is that in the first house, the hunter's house, way back in the first area, there were these dolls, like dolls made out of flesh that looked like the the enemies. And you when I first saw those, I was like, oh shit, that's like an enemy sitting in a chair. Because in the first game, they didn't really play around with the idea with like a lot of like set design giants. The stuff in the set design was more often than not like scary stuff, sure, but it didn't really use the giant creatures as set design. But this game did. It did a lot. In the first section there were the like doll corpses in the chairs. In the second section it presented the idea of simulacrums in a different way by those monster children, like the ones that were dolls. In that, like, and that section also, holy shit, had one of the scariest monsters I've seen in a horror game, that like long-necked woman. And in the third section, where you're in the hospital, there's all these like mannequins that move when you're not shining light on them. And again, like, these are the biggest enemies, like non-person enemies. Like, they're puzzle devices, but they're definitely like enemy adjacent that you've seen. And they're also these like doll like simulacrums. And a room in the hospital really stuck with me. It's the room where there's all these masks that look like kind of like the characters from the first game. And it kind of got me thinking about the idea that the distorted humans that we see throughout the game are in themselves a simulacrum in some way. So we get now to the section of the game where we like go through the TVs, and it ends up in this like kind of like psychedelic like childhood dimension with all the toys floating around and all this like music box soundtrack. And we get through this tower, we get to Sixth's room, this like distorted version of Sixth. It was an amazing final boss fight, because it's this character design. It's always been a little bit creepy throughout the first and second game, this like hooded, like little yellow hooded figure, and it just ratchets up how creepy it is to 10. And when you're in that like pink kind of womb-like space, it really does feel like you're fighting this like simulacrum, like fake version of Sixth. And the idea of like distortion is kind of starting to like well up in my mind, right, as I'm playing this. And I noticed this, like I think I switched my terminology while I was in the tower, and like pointed out that the tower is some kind of like icon of distortion. And it would make sense then that the like people that we see throughout the first and second game, who are all like warped and distorted, are also distorted versions of like a person trapped somehow in that distorted body. And I think you could even dig further into that. In the first game, I don't think you were here, Saturnia, but in the first game, the monsters, like the first two monsters, had a degree of like wearing their skin as like a piece of clothing. Like they were kind of sloughing off of their flesh, and it made them feel like they were like something was underneath their skin. And like the different monsters were in various states of this like I guess this distortion. And it kind of makes me think now, with this context of the second game, that whatever like eldritch influence exists in the maw and in the tower in the city creates some kind of distorting effect for these characters' psyches. Now that's like lore stuff, but I think it's really interesting the way this game plays with that idea. I do appreciate when a game can create like a sense of story and lore without like screaming it at you, without writing it down and recording little audio logs. I think the first game was more thematically strong, but this game was much stronger in its writing and its set design, its art design, all of that. I think there's room for Little Nightmares 3 as well. There definitely is, and I'm excited to see what they do with it. I really like these games. I'm excited. I think they're not like perfect horror games. Sometimes their gameplay is a little like chunky and slow, and sometimes there's like some mistakes involved. I could talk about that. But I really like this series, and I'm excited to see where it goes. And if the writing and like design of the first two games is anywhere to go, we're only going up from here. So I'm gonna end stream now, unless there's a secret little thing after the credits. I really like this game though. I hope there's more. I'm playing Resident Evil 8 next after this, which is a very different type of game, almost a complete different kind of horror than what we're seeing here. And I'm excited to talk about that and think about that while I play it. And definitely not excited for anything else about that game, you know? Nothing else. Hell yeah. Alright. I probably should end stream now. I have a prior obligation.